Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. How dare you, sir?" Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
And the crowd loves it. The Late Show loser. Yep, Stephen Colbert gets a lot of support and a lot of expletives, but this is all about money. His show is losing a ton of it.
Number 2.
Secretary said it, Rodney said it, sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Hard stop. New York City, how many times do you want to see NYPD attacked by illegal alien criminals in the city?
Sanctuary standoff. More criminals are running wild in another illegal immigrant sanctuary metropolis, New York City. And we just saw a Border Patrol agent almost lose his life. What the Trump team has vowed to do.
Number 1.
And I'll tell you what, I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, and the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old. He's tired as shit. Give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights.
Really, Hunter Biden, he just lets it rip. Hunter uses a howitzer verbally to blow away his party on behalf of his father, and he's managed to do the impossible, embarrass himself further, and sully his dad by saying he was on Ambien during the debate, as the party remains helplessly divided and unpopular. Gerard Braco, welcome back.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
First off, on the revelation on Ambien, that's a new one, isn't it? I mean, is he trying to bail his dad out? And if that was true, wouldn't he have been better off saying it at the time?
Yeah, look, of course he's trying to bail his dad out. I mean, you know, his dad was his only thing really that stopped him, obviously, from spending a lot of time in jail. So he has a lot of debt there, but he also clearly has a lot of anger there. Look, the Biden family have not come to terms with the damage that they did, and now, in typical terms, they want to blame everybody else. And Hunter Biden wants to blame his fellow Democrats for everything that went wrong. Well, you know, that's a kind of circular firing squad for the Democrats, really. But you know, the Bidens are responsible for everything that happened to them. Hunter played, you know, an extraordinarily and frankly sickeningly large role in the nation's life over the last few years, and it would be better for everybody if he would just go away.
You know what's so interesting is that there's different theories of, did his family know he was doing this? Would you pick someone instead of the Wall Street Journal or somebody of prestige? Wouldn't you pick a podcaster with a little bit of credibility? Nothing against Andrew Callahan, but I never heard of him. Looked him up in the background. I guess he's got a few followers.
Brian,
it looks like a ragged backyard party.
Brian, the words credibility and Hunter Biden do not belong in the same sentence.
So then why did he do it? Do you think he represents his family?
Of course.
Do you think they told him to go do that?
Listen, we know, Brian. We've seen little hints of this. We've seen little flashes from Biden himself. We've seen all the books that have now, you know, very belatedly come out and told us how incompetent and senile Biden was. Have also told us a couple of the books that came out in the last few months about the 24 election have told us, you know, how angry Biden was with Nancy Pelosi, angry with Barack Obama, angry with the party that forced him down. They are sitting there seething. They think that they refuse to come to terms with reality. They continue to deny what everybody else could see, that the man was not capable, that he was, and thanks to his, and his son was doing other stuff even way worse than being incapable.
We don't even know if that's his cocaine.
And they are just, they're all just angry, and they're sitting, and then instead of demonstrating some sort of dignity, in retirement and defeat, and let's be fair, again, Biden is sick, right? He's probably very, very sick. Come to terms with it and show some dignity, show some patriotism, and stop, kind of blaming everybody else for your own flaws.
Let me just add to this. This Mark Penn just posted this. The longtime Clinton pollster, now running the Harris. A lot of those Harris polls are him. It says, my stomach churns as seeing a foul-mouthed Hunter Biden attack the world. He's out of jail only because his dad pardoned him after he carried out a $20 million shakedown of shady foreign interests with the consent and participation of Joe Biden, and he paid no taxes on it. This was followed by fake painting sales. His laptop was 100% real, and what it revealed was horrific on all counts, from living with his dead brother's wife to fueling endless cocaine binges to abusing the trust of his dad's office. No one should pay him an iota of attention. Wow.
Yeah, look, the only other thing I say, Brian, is that this is a gift, obviously, for Donald Trump and the Republicans. The Democrats must be absolutely seething about this. The last thing they need right now, given the disarray that they're already in, and the fact that you've got people like AOC and Zoran Mamdani as kind of leading figures in the party, the lack of credibility the party now has. They want to keep the focus on the issues. They want to keep the focus on Donald Trump, on the legislation that's just gone through, the One Big Beautiful Bill, and all of those things. They want to sort of, and along comes Hunter Biden to remind us what an absolute disaster all that was, and frankly how, again, whatever doubts people may have about Donald Trump, and they may be reasonable and real doubts, this reminds them of why Donald Trump was elected. And just what a disaster the Biden was, and what a mess the Democratic Party continues to be.
No doubt about it. And the thing is, too, is it's all distraction. I think one of the biggest stories that is so beyond New York is Zoran Mamdani, because what he ran on. And sometimes, as you know, Gerard, sometimes people say things and go, yeah, that was 5 years ago. I don't feel that way anymore. That was 2 years ago. I was taken out of context. Instead, he's like, don't like capitalism, don't like billionaires, don't really defund the police. Domestic disputes should be actually handled by social workers, and it should be a jaywalking. So what their answer is to take the socialist who has a replica in running for the mayor's race in Minneapolis, and he's got another surrogate running for the open Senate seat in Michigan.
Correct.
This is getting traction.
Absolutely.
And it's almost as if we forgot that socialism has been tried, Marxism has been tried, communism has been tried, and there's people that will accept him as a citizen. Why would you come here with those beliefs and want to lead a city that's a financial capital of the world if you don't like capitalism?
That's where the energy is in the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is, as I said, is in a significant amount of disarray. They lost, all the they lost everything last November. They're struggling to find a new direction, and as quite often happens in these circumstances, the people who have the most extreme message, the ones who most animate the base, the ones who have, by the way, a very simple, glib story, and that's what Marxism has always been. Marxism has always been a story about evil capitalists exploiting people. By the way, in places like New York City, or as you said, in Minneapolis, or in parts of Michigan, and indeed many other cities in the country, there are large numbers of people for whom, the American dream seems to be out of reach, right? And by the way, these are often university graduates who've had their minds filled with left-wing propaganda in college. They come out, they've got a huge amount of student debt, and they can't get jobs that will enable them to pay and to live in these expensive cities like New York City or San Francisco or other places. And I think that message, that this is not their problem, it's not the problem of these terribly run cities, it's the problem of capitalism. That message resonates with a lot of those people, and they are, as I say, where the energy is in the Democratic Party.
It's just discouraging to think another generation won't understand how great this country is and what capitalism means. The whole the need for grit and determination and have an opportunity to be successful, but no guarantees. So the president just posted this. The Wall Street Journal ran a typically untruthful story saying that Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent explained to me that firing Jerome Too Late Powell, the worst Federal Reserve chairman in history, would be bad for the market. Nobody had to explain that to me. I know better than anybody what's good for the market. And he goes on. You guys are a bit of a war, you and the Wall Street Journal and the White House.
Well, there's nothing to do with me. I work for the editorial page of the Journal, and right. I know he's in a fight with the editor and with the proprietor. But as far as the story's concerned, the Jay Powell. We all know that there's pressure on Jay Powell. If Donald Trump really does understand that it would be disastrous to fire Jay Powell in terms of what it would mean for monetary policy and inflation, then it would be better if he stopped suggesting that he's going to fire him, because he does keep saying that. Last week, there were.
Well, he's trying to harangue him into lowering rates. At the very least,
which is precisely counterproductive, right? If the markets think, as Donald Trump says, that statement says, if the markets think that the Federal Reserve is essentially completely under the control of the President of the United States, whoever that president is, may be Donald Trump in 4 years' time, it may be somebody else. It will be somebody else in 4 years' time. Then they will not believe that monetary policy is being set in the interests of the economy, and controlling inflation and all the other things that the Fed, the dual mandate actually that it has, they'll think that the Federal Reserve is being run in the interest of getting whoever is the president of the United States reelected. That is not a recipe for sound monetary policy, and it's not a recipe for a sound economy.
Gerard, do you think, just with your economic knowledge, do you think are you surprised the rates aren't lower?
No, I'm not really, because I think the Fed is still in a wait and see mode. I think what I look at, Brian, are long term interest rates, which are bond yields, which is what the market sets. In some ways, it's more useful to look at that than actually what the Fed is doing. They remain relatively high. The 10-year yield has been up and down a little bit, but it remains high. That suggests to me that markets are concerned about two things: one, about the continuing risk of inflation and whether or not we see any impact from the tariffs, whether that feeds through into prices. And two, they're worried about the state of the budget, which, of course, as we also know, when you run a huge budget deficit, that can be inflationary. So look at those. Those rates are not set by the Federal Reserve. They are set by the markets, and the markets are continue to be worried. And I think it's therefore reasonable that the Federal Reserve continues to wait and see whether or not these inflationary concerns that they have do actually feed through into higher prices.
So we have three deals. We have the UK, we have Indonesia, and we have Vietnam. It looks like we could get Philippines today. But here's what Scott Bahnsen said as we get closer to the August 1st deadline. Cut 21.
Imagine that, steel and AI, and it's a very diversified building boom. We're seeing companies from all over the world want to come in. You mentioned the AstraZeneca, and I can tell you we're about to announce a rash of trade deals in the coming days, and a lot of these trade deals are going to include substantial investments in the U.S., whether it's autos, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals.
Your reaction?
I look forward to seeing it. We always need to be careful. The United States has been the most dynamic economy in the world for a long time, continues to be. You just talked about how important capitalism is and how successful capitalism is. Companies have been coming here. They have been investing in this country and they will continue to invest in this country because it remains the most dynamic economy in the world. We need to be careful to and it may well be that as part of these trade deals, companies are going to make more commitments to do that. But we need to be careful about two things. One, about plans that are already in place, and they're simply going to dress this up as part of a trade deal. And two, promises. A lot of people
Can you back that up? What do you mean by this? You mean like they're just waiting for a dramatic announcement?
I don't know. So we're going to have a trade deal. You mentioned we may have a trade deal with the Philippines. We may have a trade deal with some other countries. And it sounds as though, from what Bahnsen's saying, as though part of that is going to be announcements that companies are going to those foreign companies are going to invest in the United States. Well, those foreign companies, inward investment into the United States is a massive thing. You know why inward investment into the United States is so large, Brian? Because the United States has trade deficits with many countries, which means that those countries have huge amounts of dollars. What do they do with those dollars? They invest it back in the United States. This is one of the kind of flawed reasoning about the idea that trade deficits are so terrible. Those countries like China, what does China do with its deficit? With its surplus with the United States, it buys treasury bonds to a large part.
Are they not doing it?
They're still the second largest holder of treasury bonds, or the Japanese, the largest holder of treasury bonds. So the money is there because the United States has been trading with these countries and supplying those countries with dollars in exchange for goods. Those countries then have those dollars and they invest it somewhere, and a lot of it comes back into the United States. This is why their foreign direct investment into the United States is so high.
But would you also say, with the laser focus of the president and whoever the Treasury Secretary is to bring back that investment, it is really yielding more results maybe than past presidents?
I think it's too early to say. I mean, we'll see. Again, there's been significant investment in this country. There continues to be, and I think the jury is out on whether or not these tariff threats and these tariff measures really have that impact. As I say, on the one hand, yes, encouraging American companies to build in the United States is surely a good thing. Whether or not this is actually forcing foreign countries and their companies to invest in the United States, I'm open-minded, but we haven't seen it yet.
All right, we're going to take a short time out and come back with Gerard Baker. A couple more minutes. He's editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal. With me in studio is Curtis Sliwa, one of four, looking to become the mayor of New York City. We'll get to Curtis in a moment, but first let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. How dare you, sir?" Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go f yourself.
And the crowd roars, but the late show loser is done. Stephen Colbert gets a lot of support and uses a lot of expletives, but this is all about money, and his show is losing a ton of it.
Number 2.
Secretary said it, Rodney said it, sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Hard stop. New York City, how many times do you want to see NYPD attacked by illegal alien criminals in the city?
That is Tom Homan yesterday. Sanctuary standoff. More criminals running wild in another illegal immigrant sanctuary metropolis called New York City. What the Trump team is vowing to do.
Number 1.
And I'll tell you what, I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, and the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old. He's tired as give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights.
Are you kidding me? You suddenly say your dad's on Ambien? Hunter uses his verbal howitzer to blow away his party on behalf of his family, and he's managed to do the impossible, embarrassing himself further and sully his dad even more. We'll talk about that as the revelation that he's on Ambien during the debate. Who knows what else he's on? Remember, Trump said in the past, he's always said he thinks he's on something. Well, Curtis Sliwa, not on anything. In fact, he took the subway to get here, turns down private security to run here. He is New York City's own, who's never lived anywhere else. Right, Curtis?
No, I'm the consummate New Yorker running here. As you see, Zoran is off in Uganda for 2 weeks. Andrew Cuomo is out in the Hamptons.
Raising money?
Right, and Eric Adams lives in Fort Lee, New Jersey, as we all know. I'm the only person who's born and raised in New York, and you know I'll probably die in New York.
Well, not for a while. The Gottis tried that, didn't they?
Yes, they did. 5 hollow point bullets didn't do the trick.
Right. First off, just on the Hunter Biden situation, I mean, he goes out and he just eviscerated every Democrat. Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod, James Carville, Nancy Pelosi. Who the hell does George Clooney think he is? Do you think the family puts him up to this? Or do they think the guy just decides, I'm just going to just do what I want?
I think we've looked at the Biden family enough to know it is one big dysfunctional family where nobody seems to be in charge. And Hunter Biden, I don't know, he's probably still on some kind of substance. He just is so erratic. And now he's basically dropping dime on his daddy, saying he was on something all during his presidency, which is what many of us came to the conclusion of. He had cognitive problems. And yet, here's Hunter Biden, who's lucky not to be in jail, running his mouth a mile a minute and doing more damage to the party that elevated his father to the presidency, the Democratic Party.
So, Curtis, you're running, right, in a 4-person race. In the last poll, I think it was a Harris poll.
Yeah.
You're within the margin of error. So it's Mamdani, Cuomo, you, and then Eric Adams. What is your path to victory?
Well, the path to victory is we're watching the self-destruction of the sitting mayor, Eric Adams. In fact, this morning, as I was on the subway, people were asking me that Eric Adams last night at about 12:05 in the morning was tweeting out, "It's going down. Meet me after school tomorrow." I hope if there are reporters listening out there, they follow up on this. This is one of the most bizarre tweets or statements ever made.
What does it mean?
Well, first off, there's no school. It's summertime.
Right. He should be out of school.
Right. I have no idea. He likes to hang out at the hookah lounge, and smoke on the hookah pipe. But this is beyond acceptable. I think what he has to do is, if he's going to be serious running for re-election, he's got to discard all of his corrupt cronies that he's brought back into his campaign. And he has to address this sanctuary city issue.
Yes.
Kristi Noem yesterday eviscerated him. And I'll tell you why. There are 3 candidates I'm running against, Zoran, Cuomo, and Adams. All of them are for sanctuary city status. I'm opposed to it. The mayor had an opportunity twice to put it up for a vote. It's called initiative and referendum. Every year there's initiative and referendums in local elections. Twice he chose not to. This was similar in 2023. The Chicago City Council would not permit it to be put up for a vote of the people of Chicago because the majority black vote would have voted to end sanctuary city status. I know New York City would have voted. The voters would have voted to end sanctuary city status. Eric Adams twice had the chance and wouldn't do it. He defends sanctuary city status. I'm the only candidate opposed to it.
Tell me about your take on what happened on Sunday with the federal agent being attacked right by the lake by two guys, illegal immigrants on a moped with lengthy rap sheets. What's your take on that, Curtis?
This is up in Washington Heights, Inwood, predominantly Dominican community. These were Dominican thugs who had already indicated as illegals that they were enemies of society. Notice, both of them, they had huge records, and they were being turned loose, not just here, but in other places. They were committing crimes. And they were on mopeds, and what they would do is drive around on the mopeds and just snatch phones, snatch jewelry, and oftentimes hit gunpoint. In this case, this agent was off duty, obviously in New York with a young lady, and he was forced to defend his life. They pulled a gun out, and they blasted him. This is happening all the time. And that's why ICE has to have, with impunity, the opportunity to get, as Donald Trump called them, all the bad hombres out of here. Gangbangers, drug dealers, sex traffickers, narco-terrorists. There are so many there that it takes a little bit of time to do the research, ICE, but eventually they're going to get their men and women, and we need to be assisting them in ridding them of our city because they become a menace to everybody.
I want you to hear this exchange, in case you missed it. This is Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, and he, is taking a personal interest in New York. Congestion pricing, fix Penn Station, what's with the crime in the subways, right? Here's the exchange with Congressman Nadler.
Secretary Duffy, as recently as last week, you again attacked the MTA, claiming there's a surge in subway assaults and accusing the agency of withholding information. But many of your statements misrepresent the facts and ignore documentation already provided to your department. I want to address some of those claims directly. First, are you aware that major crime in the transit system, including assaults, is down 3% since last year and down 8% since 2019?
Well, I would say
that's a yes or no question.
Well, no, that's wrong. The assaults that we've seen are up 60% with MTA in the system since 2019.
Why do you continue to ignore this and lie about this in your public comments?
Well, my question, why do you continue to lie about people being lit on fire in subways or pushed in front of trains? You should be fighting to make sure your subways are safe.
Our subways
you want people to ride subways. Let's make subways safe.
Reclaiming my time. Our subways are safe, and I gave you the statistics.
They're wrong.
What do you think, Curtis?
Well, first off, this is Gerald Nadler, who in the summer of George Floyd 2020 said Antifa was just a concept. Remember, Antifa broke my jaw while we were fighting them, protecting people in the streets of New York when Bill de Blasio ordered the police to stand back. It's not a concept. They're real. But Gerald Nadler doesn't take the subways. I take the subways every day.
He couldn't get down the stairs.
No, and the Secretary of Transportation is from New Jersey. So he's come into the city quite regularly.
And he worked at 48th and 6th.
Exactly. So it's not like he was from Arkansas or from Oregon. I had no idea the subways. Assaults are up. Crime is just out of control in the subways. It's not safe. It's the veins and arteries of the city we can never recover unless there's safety in the subways. And I'm the only candidate who would know exactly what to do because I campaign in the subways.
What would you do?
Well, number one, you have to get the police actually traveling on the trains. They're positioned at the turnstiles. They're positioned on the waiting platforms. They're not in the moving trains. That's where most of the action is taking place. You must remove the homeless. You must remove the emotionally disturbed. Get them the help they need. We spend all this money, $7 billion, on illegal aliens, and we're not spending money taking care of our own American homeless and emotionally disturbed. That's a sin. Shame on us as Americans. We should be taking care of our own.
Did de Blasio disband the homeless unit within the police department?
When he defunded the police department by $1 billion, the untold story, and thanks for bringing it up, Ryan, you remember there was a homeless outreach unit that I and the Guardian Angels used to work with. These were men and women cops who dedicated themselves. They go in and out.
They knew the names of everybody. They knew their problems, their medications.
They go in and out of the shelters. They knew the directors. They knew the security. Do you know the NYPD cannot go into either a migrant shelter or a normal shelter now unless there's a 911 call? So assuming you're walking a beat, excuse me, director, could I use the bathroom? You're not permitted in the shelter. It may cause post-traumatic shock syndrome to our clients. Imagine what you would feel like as a police officer. Migrant shelters and regular shelters, you're not even permitted to go inside unless there's a 911 call.
Where'd that rule come from?
It was de Blasio's rule, Cuomo's rule, and now Eric Adams' rule.
Why do you think Cuomo lost?
because he mailed it in. Look at him. The last 3 weekends, he's been with his billionaire friends in the Hamptons. He spoke at a synagogue in the Hamptons, and he blamed Jews for him losing. He said, more than 50% of you voted for Zoran. That's ridiculous. You would never know how many Jews voted. They don't have that on the voting rolls. He needs to take culpability, but he's not ready for prime time. He's lost it. And remember, this is the guy, wherever I go, Brian, people say that's the guy who was slapping fannies and killing grannies. He'll never get over that.
How much did he cost the city in legal fees and fines?
The state, Tom DiNapoli, Democratic state controller, said the bill is up to about $63 million from all the sexual harassment charges because the state has to defend him. He has qualified immunity like civil servants do. And guess who doesn't have qualified immunity because of Cuomo? Police officers. That's why they don't do interventions, because they can be personally sued. They're the only civil servants who can be personally sued for actions that they take on our behalf.
So why would you put yourself in danger and your family? You're making what, $35,000 when you start, or $55,000 when you start, and all of a sudden there's a domestic dispute going on, and thinking to myself, wow, I don't want to get sued by both these people.
Well, Zoran Mandami doesn't even want cops dealing with domestic disputes. I've dealt with so many in tandem with the cops and the guardian angels. He wants social workers to deal with it. Let me tell you this. If that were ever put into effect, women would die, children would die, and blood would be on Zoran's hands.
We're going to take a short time out. Curtis, if people have to run from the radio right now and they want to support your candidacy, where do they go?
Sliwa for NYC.com. That's Sliwa for NYC.com.
Are there going to be debates, do you know?
Yes, there'll be two, one in September, one in October, and I can't wait.
So it's going to be the four of you or five of you? There's another...
There'll be five. A guy named Jim Walden. He's 1% Walden. But you know I'm going right at Zoran, right at Cuomo, right at Adams, because they're for migrants voting and they're for sanctuary cities, and I will not forgive nor forget that they created Zoran Mandami by failing us as governor and failing us as mayor.
He thinks he won already, doesn't he?
Oh, he's off in Uganda. He's having his... I guess he's calling it his honeymoon that he didn't have. Was that an arranged marriage? I mean, how come the wife is never out there? My wife, Nancy, is there with me everywhere, like yesterday when we were calling for no-kill shelters and putting animal abusers in jail. That's my wife right next to me. How come? Oh, that's right, Cuomo. Oh, Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a first lady. That should be Nancy Sliwa.
They're going to love the deals that President Trump and I are doing. I mean, they're just going to love them. You know, the president figured out the right answer and sent letters to these countries, said this is going to fix the trade deficit. This will go a long way to fixing the trade deficit. And that's gotten these countries to the table. And they're going to open their markets or they're going to pay the tariff. And if they open their markets, the opportunity for Americans to export, to grow their business, farmers, ranchers, fishermen, this is going to be, the next 2 weeks are going to be weeks for the record books. President Trump is going to deliver for the American people.
So that is Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, doing the cheerleading on Face the Nation over the weekend. And we'll look at trade deals. August 1st coming quickly. And what do we know? The president of the Philippines is here. What else do we know? That Indonesia and Vietnam and the UK are done. So Philippines in the region, very friendly with us. You would imagine there'd be something positive there, but it's not the big deals we're looking for. Let's bring in David Bahnsen from the Bahnsen Group, CIO, founder and managing partner, and author of Full-Time Work in the Meaning of Life. David, your thoughts about what Howard Lutnick said. He's looking for deals to come in. If not, you're going to get letters. What does it mean for an economics guy?
Well, look, my first disagreement with Secretary Lutnick is that he says we're going to fix the problem of trade deficits, and I don't agree that trade deficits are inherently a problem. But if what he means is we're going to get improvement in opening more markets, then that would, of course, would be a good thing, and it would have been wonderful for that to be the stated policy intention to begin with, because that's what I love is more trade, more activity, more opportunity for both importers and exporters of American businesses. That's ultimate America First economic agenda. More trade.
All right. And what are you hearing? What country is closest?
I believe Japan is closer. And it's not because I think the European Union deal is vulnerable. It's just because the European Union deal is 27 countries. It's very complicated. We know that Philippines, which is a much smaller situation, is apparently imminent. But I do believe that there's going to be an announcement with Japan sooner than later.
How would the market react to that?
I think it's basically priced in. If we mean the stock market, the bond market, financial markets have largely expected a lot of those things. The thing that really matters right now, Brian, is impact to small business. It just doesn't get any attention because Nvidia stock goes up, the S&P goes up, everyone thinks everything's fine. There are hundreds, and I mean hundreds, or thousands of small businesses that are at a standstill, waiting to get clarity.
What kind of businesses would be affected by global trade?
Well, the most primary examples of who I'm talking to, it's 130 businesses. I've personally talked to the owners of the business that have referred to placing an order that then after the order is placed, something changes and then they end up with a tariff bill at the port. Okay, that's a significant issue. And these aren't big public companies with access to capital markets that can kind of buy their way through it, let alone access to lobbyists to get exceptions and waivers, all that kind of stuff. So I think that you have a high amount of American importers that make something, and often they import something into their manufacturing. It's 40% of our imports. 37% of our imports from China are American importers that are making something once it gets here. It's unfinished goods, part of the processing. So I think that that's a big uncertainty, and Japan is a part of that. We bring in a lot of unfinished goods from Japan. If we get a good deal there, that's going to help kind of bring clarity to markets.
So listen to what the Treasury Secretary, who I know you like, Scott Bessent. He was a good choice, right?
Yeah, a very, very good choice.
Yeah, cut 21.
Imagine that, steel and AI, and it's a very diversified building boom. We're seeing companies from all over the world want to come in. You mentioned the AstraZeneca, and I can tell you we're about to announce a rash of trade deals in the coming days, and a lot of these trade deals are going to include substantial investments in the U.S., whether it's autos, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals.
So can you read between the lines? You know him personally. He's not like Lutnick. He's not a seller.
No.
He's a fat guy.
Yeah, and not only is that the public persona you're referring to, which I like publicly, but privately, he's also really good at having a calming effect on the president to explain, here's what you want to accomplish, but here's some of the trade-offs, here's some of the side effects. That's where I personally think Pete Navarro, and to a certain degree Secretary Lutnick too, went astray early on, is they didn't properly prepare the president for some of the trade-offs. I think Secretary Bessent's a much more sober voice in that regard.
Absolutely. So investments under Trump. Apple has pledged $500 billion. Some people say wait and see on that. We have Project Stargate, $500 billion. That is Stargate.
SoftBank. Well, it's a consortium of a big group of different people that have all pledged.
That was in the Oval. NVIDIA, we know $500 billion. Do you think that's coming back here?
Well, again, about $430 billion of that already was. So
what do you mean in the chip deal?
Yeah, we have to separate what some of these announcements from what they were already doing versus what.
That's why I have you here, David. Micron Technology, $200 billion. Yeah. IBM, $150 billion. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is $100 billion. Now, on the surface, that's what we need, right? Some of those chips coming out of Taiwan here. But is there a but?
The only but is on a lot of the deals, they just simply were things that were already in motion. They're not related to tariffs at all. Taiwan Semiconductor was announcing,
I think it's more related to Trump taking over.
Yeah, but not in Taiwan Semiconductor's case. That Arizona investment was massive. Some of that was back to Trump's first term. This was just something that they were wanting to onshore. There's a lot of ongoing evolution here. The one that the SoftBank deal, and yesterday they said, okay, well, we said $500 billion, we haven't done anything yet. And those things concern me. Now, look, it doesn't concern me politically. The president's a sales guy, a real estate guy. He loves the headlines. But then when you look to future investment, I've been really humbled by the Johnson & Johnson inclusion in President Trump's Rose Garden announcement on April 2nd, Liberation Day. So
that was $55 billion.
Yes, but $42 billion of it they had already been doing. And so I've owned Johnson & Johnson for 23 years. My company owns hundreds of millions of dollars of the stock. And I said, what's he talking about? I go and looked in it, and they basically had increased over 5 years by $8 billion, $2 billion a year. That's fine. He has every right to go hype up announcements. That's what politicians do. But where there's things that don't ever happen, that ends up hurting him. That's why I was critical of the Doge thing, overselling, under-delivering. I want to under-promise and over-deliver. So a $500 billion announcement from a company that has no possible way of knowing that they're going to be able to do that much over 5 years, 10 years, I think that becomes problematic. It sets a certain expectation in. The Taiwan deal is real. A lot of the pharmaceutical and semiconductor onshoring is very good for the country. I'd focus on those things that are matters of critical infrastructure.
So I'm looking at this report in Axios today, and it says higher earning Americans, and they have what it looks like an EKG machine, judging by the years in the bottom, are feeling pretty good these days. It's like their optimism is going up, but the sentiment among those at the bottom is stagnating at much lower levels. Do you translate that into prices of items when I go to the grocery stores, if I want to get a new car?
That has been the case through the inflation we had in 2022, but I think the biggest issue is always how people feel at different economic rungs on the ladder is wages. Is when wages are growing, real wages are growing, people always feel better. So lower income people really pulled well on this in the first Trump term because their real wages did grow the most since financial crisis. Right now, I suspect we just need more time to see real wages increase. But the reason why people at the higher end feel good is because they own assets. And things like the stock market, real estate, when those things are going higher, they generally are going to feel better. We're an ownership-oriented society. But where you need the lower deciles of wage earners to feel better is their wages have to go higher.
April 21st is so-called Liberation Day.
April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Yeah.
What did you think then, and what do you think now that we're in July?
It was an incredibly disappointing day for me as someone who supports so much of the president's economic agenda about tax cuts, about deregulation, about energy
which he's
independence.
doing.
All of those things that he has done. I still want to see them cut spending more, but I am a real supply side Reaganite supporter of the vast majority, but not all of President Trump's agenda. April 2nd was not what we were expecting. They were linking the trade policy to countries that dared to sell us more things than we sold them. And there's just simply nothing wrong with that.
But since, in that gap, I know how you felt then. I think you did our show that day.
I did. And 5 days later, I think Secretary Bahnsen became the cooler head who prevailed versus some of the other folks that were advising the president. And I think now we've seen months play out, and it's very clear to me that the president got what we call, I'd say to my clients, market discipline. The president has no interest in a stock market collapse, a bond market collapse, a currency collapse under his watch. And he realizes we have to go through it a certain way, but he's a deal maker, a negotiator. I don't always agree with the things said, but I do understand they're trying to get to a point of deals. So if in the end, look, I think a lot of people on MAGA are going to be upset, not people like me, because I think we're going to be trading more with China, not less with China. That's different than a lot of people expected, but it's probably better for the economy, certainly better for markets.
All right. It's so interesting to talk to you, David. David Bahnsen, the Bahnsen Group. There's so many different balls in the air right now with the economy. Some things unprecedented, and we have an August 1st deadline, so there's a reason to do deals. So hopefully they'll come in and they'll make our country better. David, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.